Yeah, it's live now. We will start.
Very good evening to all of you present here, and we welcome you to this discussion on understanding and dealing with abuse and abusive relationships. And on behalf of ESPA, the Eastern Zonal Psychological Association, I feel happy to welcome all of you, and especially our revered guests, Professor Dr. Bula Bhadro, Ms. Ratnaboli Roy, and Ms. Duti Malabakchi. They all are our esteemed speakers today. So instead of me talking any further, let us straight away get into the mode of the discussion. But just before that, a little here and there, a little thing about ESPA. Atri will take over and she'll guide you through this 1 hour. Thank you so much.
May I start?
No, sorry. Good evening and a very warm welcome to the Facebook Live organized by Eastern Zonal Psychological Association. Today we are going to talk about something which has become an inseparable part of our society, a serious social and cultural problem for everyone, and that is abuse. Abuse occurs when people mistreat or misuse other people, showing no concern for their integrity and in a manner degrades their well-being. Tonight, we have with us our esteemed panelists who will enlighten us upon this topic from different perspectives. But before we start, I would like to request our president, Ms. Shikha De, to say a few words about ESPA and also about the topic. Shikha De?
Good evening. Am I audible? Good evening. I, Shikha De, President of Eastern Zonal Psychological Association, in short, ESPA, welcome you all, our eminent guests, members of ESPA, as well as the viewers to our first Facebook Live. ESPA started its journey in 2003 with a plan of initiation to have a platform of practicing psychologists, mainly in Kolkata, from where they can express, share, and speak out their ideas, knowledge, needs, and also can help the society to make them aware about mental health issues and its issues that needs attention. We also want to help them in their need individually as well as in group or community, as had done after Nandigram movement, when the peoples were suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. This association is totally of the psychologist, for the psychologist, and by the psychologist. Today, our topic is on abuse and abusive relationship, which has become very prominent and significant issues in present pandemic situation, mostly with the complaints of domestic violence. This is not a new issue. From history, we find it presents all through in human relationship in society. But for the recent past, the complaint of child and woman abuse has become very, very hot topic, rather an issue which needs attention. Abuse, the word means offensive behavior that hurts the person to whom it expresses. It can be physical, mental, verbal, sexual, and overall mental, I say emotional, which is the most important, that cannot be seen from the opposite side or outside, but burn the person from inside and keep a lifelong effect on him or her. Abuse mostly connotes aggressive behavior, causes insult, humiliation to the person, but the behavior is also depends on the degree, place, time, and perception of the person who is abused. Sorry, from my clinical point of view, experience rather, I just want to share one of my experience regarding abuse. A young girl was referred to me with a complaint of escaping college social withdrawal, and severe aggressive acting out toward mother, whose father expired in an accident. It reveals since childhood she was weak and thin, thus her mother was anxious about her health, expressed that to all openly. মেয়েটাকে রোগা, ঠিকমতো খেতে চায় না. She was accustomed with that. Since her early adolescence age and later when friends started bullying her for her underdeveloped appearance, cracking jokes, she started feeling humiliated with her body image, gradually entered into a deep depression, becoming withdrawn, avoiding college, and she started pouring all her aggression over her mother. In course of therapy, he blamed her mother for her body shaming. The word she used as abuse started by her mother since she was in childhood. That time she felt it was love, but late realized it's an insult. And what he said, basically, mother felt ashamed with her weak, thin daughter, and so she abused her in that way. And so, how abuse felt is a very delicate part of the life. Thank you. Thank you. Over to Atri for and go for the further review.
Thank you, Shikhari. Now we will move on to our speakers. First, we have with us renowned sociologist Professor Dr. Bula Bhadro. She is an alumnus of President College and University of Calcutta, did her MA and PhD from McMaster University, Canada, where she taught for 3 years as assistant professor. She joined Department of Sociology, University of Calcutta, and taught for 28 years. At present, she is the professor and head, Department of Sociology at Sister Nivedita University, Kolkata. She has been a visiting faculty in several universities in India and abroad. Her research interest and areas of specialization includes post-colonial theory, sociology of gender, sociology of childhood, and sociology of science and technology. She has published extensively on gender, childhood, and technology nationally and internationally and supervised a large number of PhDs. She is recipient of Professor D.N. Majumdar Memorial Gold Medal 2017 as the Distinguished Social Scientist by Indian 2017. She is the regional representative in gender, women, and society 2014. Sociology of for 3 minutes.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, ma'am, but there is a technical issue.
But we
Nobody
can
is.
hear her. But we can hear
No, no,
her.
no. In the Facebook section, live Facebook section, there is no sound. So that's why I need to. I'm really sorry, ma'am. I'm really sorry.
From the beginning,
And
this would happen.
this is
Yeah.
what Ratnaboli has been apprehensive about, and she's told me right from the beginning. I know that.
I'm
Yeah,
so sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry to all the panelists. Let's
she
just
told
have
me
2
right on
minutes.
day one.
Actually, they didn't hear me from the beginning, right from the beginning, or somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle.
Which middle I have to know, because how far I should repeat, because these are the basic assumptions of the position.
I think we are okay now. It's audible now. So, ma'am, may I request you once again to start from the beginning? I'm
Beginning.
really very sorry, ma'am.
It's
But
okay.
Atri, before Buladi starts, let me request you all to please ensure that this thing doesn't happen continuously, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
if it keeps on happening all the time, you all know me a little bit, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So please.
Onoma, can you confirm that whether it's okay or not?
Yeah, you all are audible.
There is a sound disturbance.
Sorry, Buladi. Yeah.
Certainly there is.
Sorry, ma'am. Ma'am, if you please
Start
start from
again.
the beginning. I'm really very
Yeah.
sorry.
This happens with the first singer who sings, and then nobody can hear, so the singer has to sing it. Let me thank ISBA first for allowing a sociologist to enter into the territory of psychology, and thank also ISBA for selecting such a sensitive issue, which is very important by the demand. This is an integral part of our life, especially those COVID, very painfully to those people who are actually living on the verge or marginal sort of people. And this is actually what we see, a reflection of social definitions of abuse applied by gatekeepers. Gatekeepers are those who controls or manipulates the access to resources, information, etc. So the powerful gatekeepers of the society are actually getting the COVID to be utilized so that abuse gets up. And what happens is, when a social definition is applied, that how to behave and how not to behave, COVID is much more applicable, telling women stay home, stay safe, and everybody else. And that women are not safe at home. The classic contradiction of this slogan comes out, that women are abused like anything during the time they stay in COVID, during COVID. So the whole slogan of staying home, staying safe kind of laughs at our face, that women are not safe in the home. So it is not a sweet home for women. So in a relationship, abuse occurs when there is a pattern of behavior who's gaining control and power over other person, be it intimate partner, be it a child by a parent, or elderly by adult sons and daughters, etc. So the abusers uses the relationship and controls and manipulates to the power the abuser injures. The most common attitude of an abuser is that a sense of entitlement. Abuser feels that the abuser is entitled to say or do whatever the abuser thinks, because abuser can get away with it. And abuser also thinks that they can get what they want, and that should take priority over everybody else, of course, including the victim. Now, research has shown, actually, research has contradicted the common misconception what causes abuse. Abuse is not really caused by being provoked, angered, mental health issue, loss of control, etc. Nothing of those actually matters in the abuse. What matters very clearly is that being an abuser is a choice. that person makes. It is the social construction of the personality which makes an abuser. The abuser makes a choice that he or she wants to abuse the other person because the other person is not able to give up, resist, or protest that much that the abuser will be affected. So abuser actually sees things from the power relation point of view, from a hierarchy point of view, and can be a parent who abuses children, can be a husband who abuses wife. Mostly wives are abused, but I would say that even if there is a 1% wife that would be abusing the husband, I haven't met some, but possibility is there. And also in the relationships, in the partnership relationship, could be that possible. So in person may be subjected to lots of kinds of abuse. And most of the time, the abusers are parents, romantic partners, friends, and colleagues. And this tells us one thing: abuser is nearby, known. Somebody strange person comes and abuses you, actually is rare. Most of the time, people you know are abusers. Like the parents often tell their children how worthless they are, give them silent treatment, labels them. Some father I heard calling her daughter half intelligence. So I asked the father that, what do you mean by that? You're calling your daughter in front of 5, 7 people who are not very known to your daughter, and you're calling her half intelligent. What do you mean by that? Then he said, well, you won't understand that. My daughter understands. I always tell her she's half intelligent. Then I said, where did she leave the other half? In you? I mean, you are then also half intelligent. If your daughter is half intelligent, then he probably realized that the abuse coming back to him. Then he said, I don't want to talk about it. I said, yeah, I know. What is there to talk about? I realized that. So parents often are very quick, like the husbands, that they torture the psyche, the existence of the person by so much that the person becomes worrisome, stressful, suffers from anxiety, become very fearful, and lives a life, which becomes no life. So what abuse does is actually kills, but keeping it alive in a bodily form. রবীন্দ্রনাথ জীবিত মৃত্যুতে বলেছিলেন, কাদম্বরী মরিয়া প্রমাণ করিল যে সে মরে নাই। এখানে ব্যাপারটা হচ্ছে যে কিছু লোককে জীবিত থাকিয়া প্রমাণ করিতে হয় যে আসলে সে মরিয়াই আছে, অর্থাৎ জাস্ট ওয়ান স্টেপ টু দ্য ডেথ, লিভিং এ ডেড সিনারিও। So the effects on the health, mental and physical, and the existence is horrible. It brings shame, helplessness, fear, confusion, a difficulty in concentrating, insomnia, sleeplessness, social withdrawal. And if children experiences this, the whole life is going to be paralyzed in a way that they may not be able to actually erase the memories of this kind of childhood. Specifically, the negative labeling, the parents and teachers. School teachers, with all due respect, are often very harsh, very judgmental, that when they talk to students who haven't got marks. Not getting marks is almost a crime in our school system, which is obviously contra to knowledge, because we don't test knowledge to our school system. We almost test actually our knowledge, that how much we could not give. Because if we were able to give properly, this would not have happened. So I'll take the responsibility as a teacher that whenever we will say negative things, that means I am at fault too, because I was unable to do that. And if this happens at the school level, then the child's mind is actually blocked, cannot open up. It is like, if you see nightmares and keep on seeing the nightmares, you often live with your nightmares when it is not night. It would be like that. But there is no system yet for our system of education where school teachers go through a regular counseling, regular conferences with mental and social health experts. The system hasn't been here. Now, my last point, and probably the most important point, which has bothered me when I did the research on violence, domestic violence, violence on children. Why do abused people stay in the relationships? Be it a wife, be it an elderly mother, be an adolescent child. The first thing is where to go. কোথায় যাবে? বেরিয়ে গেলাম বাবা মার বাড়ি থেকে, যাবোটা কোথায়? কোথায় যাবে? বেরিয়ে গেলাম স্বামীর বাড়ি থেকে, কোথায় যাবে? Has to go somewhere where she will not be just dead or tortured further. So the first thing is where to go. Shelter, support, which is very problematic everywhere. And then the fear comes out of that. If I accept the abuse, I'm at least alive for the moment. But if I don't accept the abuse, I have to go out. So there is a double fear jeopardy, which we call put in the door, meaning এক পা বাড়িতে আছে, এক পা বাইরে আছে, দরজার বাইরে এক পা, দরজার ভেতরে আরেক পা, এইভাবে এক্সিস্ট করে। অর্থাৎ one foot outside every moment the person feels must go out, must leave this horrible scenario. And every other moment the person thinks, what do I do? Where do I go? To whom I tell? I'll be embarrassed if I tell, oh, I have been abused. I'm an educated woman, even a school teacher, college professor, still abused. Why? I'm an engineer, still abused. I'm a performing artist, still abused. So what am I going to do? And the adolescent child thinks, what should I do? Should I kill myself? What do I do? So there is a huge fear, embarrassment, tension, stress. And then what happens? In the end, in this process of abusive part, it becomes low self-esteem person. Every time I cannot probably do it. I'm not good enough to do it. Why? Because I have heard most of the time that I am unable to do this. So if I cannot do this, I better stay on whatever I get. নেই মামার চেয়ে কানা মামা ভালো। ঠিক আছে, ভালো করে কথা বলে না, মারধর করে, মাঝে মাঝে রেগে যায়, ইত্যাদি, খেতে দেয় না, তবুও তো আছি বেঁচে, মরে তো যায়নি। So then বাঁচিয়া মরিয়া আছি। I am alive, but not really alive in the sense life is actually not running. I don't have money. If you don't have the financial independence, which children often don't have, some women sometimes don't have, elderly people do not have, because elderly abuse has gone up in India like anything. We haven't been talking about that much, but it has gone up really. And nowhere to go. And another group of people whom we generally do not talk about are differently abled, disabled persons. What happens? A disabled person is abused in the relationship. It's a double scenario, double impact on the person, that she or he cannot go anywhere, has to stay with the abuser. It's almost a compulsory pattern. You are living with the abuser. You're living with your jailer. So the home becomes a total institution. In a sense, we all know that people need people. I mean, that's what society is all about. The society doesn't have a shape or a color or a smell. Society doesn't look heart-shaped or something other shape. Society is invisible, but it is there because it is network of relationships. And in this network of relationships, if the major relationships do not work, if you're harassed, abused at home, if you're harassed, abused at workplace, if you're harassed by your peers, if you're harassed by surrounding people more, because somehow you are a bully, somehow you are being bullied. People have found you are soft, you cannot really fight that much, you're not that aggressive. Because women, as all in India, are not supposed to be aggressive. They are supposed to be লজ্জাশীলা। লজ্জা নারীর ভূষণ। এই লজ্জা করে করে নির্লজ্জ লোকেদের সমস্ত অপরাধটা মহিলাদের বেশিরভাগ সময় নিতে হয়। সুতরাং what happens is we want a passive, very very লক্ষ্মী মেয়ে। আজ পর্যন্ত লক্ষ্মী ছেলে বলে আমি কথা শুনিনি। যেমন সতী উল্টোটা কি আমি জানি না, তার কোনো পুংলিঙ্গ আছে কিনা, whether we have a may as opposed to সতী chaste. I have never heard of an unchaste man. The adjective never been used about an unchaste man. But if woman becomes, then it's a chastity question. So all these kind of traditions, all these type of social practices bruises us every day and night. And when it is implemented through power hierarchy, workplace bosses, family boss, parental bossing, that creates a nobody. So what abuse does is actually create non-individuals. In psychology, I'm sure the development of the individual is one of the central core issues which people deal with. In sociology, we deal with how the individual is actually everyday dies or everyday lives through the network of social relationships, which we call society. Now, if we do not have that, then we don't have anything actually. So, if an abuse exists in any form, sometimes people think, it's an entitlement theory. Abuse, oh, I can tell this to my son or daughter, or I can tell to my mother also, elderly mother, disabled sister, or anybody. For that matter, it doesn't matter. Or if you know a transgender person, LGBT, and if it comes out he or she hasn't told, then my God, that will create a tsunami. It's a sort of a mental tsunami which will happen surrounding us. LGBT, you are a friend with LGBT. Thought about it. What is there to think about? LGBT is a person like anybody else. So whatever we do not know, whatever we think as something shady, according to our social definitions, gatekeepers' definition, we actually abuse them. So what happens in the end? We don't leave. We leave in a deadly manner. So my last sentence would be, stop the abuse and crush the abuser. We should all protest that abuse if we come to know. But do not judge the person. Don't tell your friend, why are you not leaving the abusive relationship? Is it that easy to leave? No, it is not easy at all. It's a very painful scenario because people have committed. So it is difficult to break the commitment. So at a certain point, we must say that we have to leave. And if your friend or your somebody you know decides to leave, help and support. So those who are sensitive, I will request for you to provide help and support without judging the abused person. Don't judge. You should have left earlier. You should not have married. You should have done this. You should have so on and so forth. Please, don't be prescriptive. Because we all think that we can give all the prescription, but not that. Just be there. What we need is love and support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for explaining wonderfully the perspective of both the abuser and the victims, and also sharing us your views about what causes abuse and what are the outcomes of abuse. And I again regret for the technical glitch, and I apologize to you. Next, we have with us
Atri, just one second. Before we move on to Ratnambuli, Buladi, just in case you are there till the end, I would beg to differ with you on a certain points, which I will discuss in due course of time. Yes, Atri, take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Shubhanadi. Next, we have with us renowned mental health activist, Ms. Ratnambuli Ray. Ms. Ratnambuli Ray, she is an Ashoka Fellow, a trained clinical psychologist, and the founder of Anjali, a right-based organization in Kolkata, West Bengal, which works for persons with mental health condition and or psychosocial disability. She was awarded Human Rights Watch's Alison Days Forges Award for Extraordinary Activism and Times Woman Hero by Times of India. I would like to request ma'am to share her view on this topic. Ma'am, over to you.
Thanks, Atri. Namaskar, and I'm very happy and honored to be here at ESPA's conference, and because my relationship with the founder goes back to my university and college days, and I especially extend my heartfelt thanks to Subarna and Shikhadi and all the other members who are here. Actually, Buladi said everything. There's nothing more perhaps one can add to what Buladi has said. However, given my location and given the kind of work I do and being a mental health practitioner of a different kind, I would like to see abuse from the point of view of the other, which means usually the persons who are abused, because that's the large chunk of people that I deal with. The first question that we need to ask is, do we really fathom the depth of abuse? How do we construct abuse? How do we imagine abuse? Because we know that in our country, abuse is normalized. The way we bring up our children, the parenting skills, it's the school, as Buladi was mentioning. There's a lot of inherent violence and operations from a position of power. So we grow up and we accept and we internalize it as something which is normal, part of growing up, part of our working culture, part of being in a marital relationship. A large and enormous task lies on people like us who are working on the ground to make people conscious as to this is abuse. I know many cases where financial abuse happens. While there is abuse, while there is verbal abuse and everything that we can see, there's also very subtle emotional abuse happening in middle-class families, especially with women. I can cite an example here that one of the women who came to us came from a middle-class family, was working in a bank, was earning a fat salary, but she was not allowed to spend that money. The checkbook, the card, everything remained with her partner. So even if she wanted $100, she would have to seek permission from her partner and accept the dole. Therefore, the abuse is very subtle. Abuse is often intangible. And I think the question that we need to ask vis-a-vis abuse, while we know it's a power and control issue and power and authority issue, the question we need to ask ourselves is, how do we feel about the way we are treated? I think that's the first question we should ask ourselves to know whether abuse is happening or not. If you're not comfortable with someone hurling abuses at you, and the kind of feeling that is generated within you, you should be able to articulate that. I think the second problem that we see is the articulation of what we are feeling and why we are feeling, because we are not taught to articulate. As activists, as people working on the ground, we talk to groups of women, we talk to groups of disabled people, where we have to kind of tell them over and over again, if you feel that this is not right, if you feel that something wrong is happening to you, do try and articulate. The articulation can be half-baked. It may be half sentences, but it is up to us how we attend at that level of language and decode what the person is saying, especially for people suffering from psychosocial disability. Bulati was saying that we do not talk about the abuse of people with psychosocial disability. Why we do not talk about the abuse which is very, very common with disabled people? Because the inherent notion is the legitimacy. Whether they are saying the truth, one, and second, whether it is really not part of a delusion or a hallucination, quote unquote. So it then becomes my narrative versus her narrative. And therefore, large number of abusers go unattended and therefore unaddressed. The second point that I would like to make is that when the structures are abusive, and mental health system or psychiatry is not above that. I know that people would be uncomfortable, especially within ESPA, to hear this, but the way psychiatry is organized, the way knowledge is organized, it automatically confers power to the person, which leaves the door open for abuse. And because I work in public mental health institutions, I have seen how structures abuse people with mental health condition, with psychosocial disability. It can be very brutal, use of lathis, use of stakes, withdrawing food, punishing people in seclusion cells, even administering electric shocks, not taking consent are some of the very common abuses that we have seen or see within the mental health system. And there is a certain kind of endorsement of these brutal procedures by the structure because there is a need to control people with psychosocial disability, because in our imagination, they are unmanageable, they are dangerous, and they can harm others. Of course, things in Bengal have gone sea changes in the last 20 years because there is no ECT, the seclusion cells have been broken down in hospitals, prescription audits are happening, there is a constant vigilance over food and over medication. Lot of, civil society groups such as Anjali is working actively, and it has been recognized by the government as a whistleblower, and things are changing for the better. Whether a situation is abusive or not is often not understood by the structure as well. I'll just give you an example. A dead body, a person who died in a large mental hospital in Kolkata, the dead body was taken out from the ward and kept on the veranda. And in the veranda, there are many people loitering, and that's their loitering place because they need space for circulation. And they kept telling the social workers who were there that এখানে মৃতদেহ পড়ে আছে, আমাদের ইনফেকশন হয়ে যাবে, কেন এরকম আছে, আচ্ছা আমরাও কি তাহলে মরে যাব? So a very simple thing or a complex thing like putting the dead body in the veranda, which impacting other patient can itself be abusive, does often go unnoticed. Structure like patriarchy, what it does to us we all know, and Buladi has spoken in details about domestic violence. I just want to very quickly mention the cycle of violence where there is build up, then there is acting out, then there is active violence, and then there is again the stage of honeymooning. So many of us are stuck in that cycle of violence because, as Buladi said, there are many, many reasons, financial reasons, reasons of housing, reasons of lack of social support, etc., which I'm sure Dutimala in her piece will address how law is trying to address the structural violence and the structural abuse on the marginalized, on the poor, and on the powerless. I will stop here and perhaps take questions and get into interaction once we hear everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving an insight upon the subtle cases of abuses which we often did not notice. Next, we have with us.
Atri, once again, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, as usual, I keep interfering after everybody because no, what I just wanted to mention is that why we all wanted Ratnabuli here is because I mean, when I say that she's a mental health activist, I mean it %, because she has actually been working. I mean, long before than I ever came to know her, because I came to know her only in the year, I mean, during that Bhalo Achi Bhalo Theko period, I actually came to know her much before that, because I had heard of Anjali. I did not know her personally, but I had always heard of the work that they were doing. So thank you, Ratnabali. Thank you so, so much.
I hope, Shubhana, you didn't mind me pointing out the inherent power.
Absolutely. I wanted you to do that because that's a fact. That's a fact.
And also in psychology, because we do hear a lot of discomfiture within therapeutic situations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we do go wrong at times also. So we are human beings.
No, it's not about wrong and right.
No, I understand. What you are telling is absolutely right. The power structure is very much there.
Yeah.
In this patriarchy, the power structure is very much there. If not anywhere in our collective unconscious, that's so very much there. So it comes out at times. Thank you so much. Yeah, over to you, Atri. Sorry.
Thank you, Shubhanadi. Thank you, Ratnabuli ma'am. Next, we have with us Ms. Dutimala Bagchi. She is a practicing advocate in the field of criminal law and matrimonial related cases. She was appointed as a special public prosecutor in the Juvenile Justice Board, South Chobbish Parganas. She has been engaged in working with the victims of human trafficking. I would now request ma'am to share her views from the perspective of legal perspective. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Atri. Good evening to everybody. Thank you very much to ISPA for inviting me today. I'm really honored. As per the, am I audible? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you are.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. As per the recent reports of National Crime Research Bureau, West Bengal is in the third position in India, lodging complaints of abuse, domestic violences, and offences related to women. And I also mentioned that as per the Commission of Women's recent report, 86% women who experienced violence during the lockdown period sought help. Moreover, 77% victims who experienced violence did not even mention the incidents to anybody. Now, I'd say that we all know that we all knew that after marriage, as per the Indian Penal Code, any woman who experience any kind of torture, physical, mental, any kind of torture, can lodge complaint as per Indian Penal Code. She can lodge complaint before the PS. If PS did not support her, she can lodge complaint to higher authorities, or else she can file complaint before the nearest jurisdiction of her. But this law cannot strengthen the hand of a woman who suffered, who experienced the physical and mental torture during her stay in her matrimonial home, or we can say in her shared household. So our lawmakers try to make this strengthen the laws, so they create the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act. Here I can say that we are listening about the abuse and all. So what is abuse? Abuse are many kinds of things, like physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal and emotional abuse, insults, humiliation, repeated threats to cause physical harm to any other persons related to the aggrieved. Aggrieved means who suffered who witnessed the torture. Economic abuse, we all know the deprivation, dispose of household assets. Household assets means after marriage, a woman who in her with her husband or husband himself can hold assets. So these are the from that side she also can deprive. Restriction to continue the access to which are she is entitled to use or to enjoy during her stay. These all are under the domestic violence. Now, this prevention of domestic violence, prevention of women from domestic violence is a particular certain good things in it, because in this act we have the laws which only deals with civil rights, like custody laws, lies the custody laws. But in this act, which also gives power, gives right, gives protection to a woman, from this act she can lodge cases asking the return of her striven articles, asking monetary relief, asking the custody of child, asking the medical benefits from her husband. Here also it is very important to lodge complaint under this act, because she can file cases from her shared household, that means her matrimonial home. Moreover, when she is fighting with her husband, she can stay with the permission of a court in her matrimonial home, or she can ask for an order from the learned court that the other persons like her husband and in-laws can move away from that house, or she can ask for a separate alternative accommodation from her husband and asking the court to pay the rent by her husband of that separate particular house which she will take as a rent. This is also a very important thing, that maybe she is fighting a case from her matrimonial home or paternal home, or anywhere who the relations who are helping out from her this problem. She can also ask before the court for their protection also, and she can ask the monetary relief from the court. If the husband neglects or refuses to pay, she can ask before the court to give the monetary relief directly from the employer of her husband. Moreover, this is if a lady or a aggrieved woman cannot file or cannot lodge complaint against her husband before the competent court of law due to her financial crisis, the district legal services authority in every district provides her an advocate with free of cost to fight for her during lodging complaint or fighting her cases. Here I also mention that these rights she should with this right she should fight against the abuse. Don't take abuse as a normal course. Try to protest in everywhere she is facing this abuse. Move on from any abusive relationship, because as per our Indian constitution, everybody should have a right with dignity, right to stay with dignity. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your speech. Now we have with us Dr. Shubhona Sen. Dr. Shubhona Sen has completed her PhD in Applied Psychology from University of Calcutta. She has 30 years of teaching and administrative experience and is presently working as a guest faculty in various institutions of Kolkata, like Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, United World, and many other eminent organizations. Dr. Sen has participated in various seminars and workshops as a speaker across the country, including institutions like NIMHANS Bangalore. She conducts training programs on various institutions and corporate across the country. She lends her service as a consulting psychologist and is the secretary of the Eastern Zonal Psychological Association. She is presently a director of Manav Zameen Foundation. Ma'am, I would like to request you now share your views.
Thank you, Atri. I don't want to thank ESPA separately because that actually doesn't make much sense. Lots of thanks to our little friend Dutimala. I mean, she's the youngest probably of the speakers, so I say little friend. And my long-term very good friend Ratnabuli, and a very recently found very good senior friend Buladi. Thanks to all, and definitely I will refer to Ratnabuli and Buladi both when I talk about a couple of things, because the best part of being the last speaker is that you actually don't have to speak, because mostly all the points are covered. So generally I try to be the last speaker where I have to speak the least, though I'm a talkative person otherwise. But generally in these cases, I love to listen to people, especially people who were there today, because law is something which I really don't know or understand much about. So the perspective of Dutimala gave me a lot of insight. I had the privilege of being with her in one other program as well. I'll take 2 points which Buladi and Ratnabuli had mentioned, which I really liked. One, Buladi said that this abuse has a lot to do with power. Yes, very much. It has a lot to do with power. But when I told Buladi that, Buladi, I'll also differ with you. When she said, probably she did not mean to say, but while saying, she mentioned that this has everything to do with the power thing and nothing to do with anything else. And in that anything else, she also mentioned mental health. I have a different take on that. It has a lot to do with power, but it also has a little to do with mental health. Quite a little to do with mental health. And Ratnabali had used a word which, I really, really feel that's absolutely the biggest problem with abuse. That is, abuse is normalized. That I feel is the biggest problem with abuse. The fact that it's been normalized does not let us address the issues properly. Because pretty many things we take it very normally, very casually, very naturally, very usually, very generally, whatever. I had the privilege of working with the West Bengal Women's Commission as a consulting psychologist. I used to go there once a week, and I used to feel scared. After a couple of days, I started feeling scared as to what I'm going to hear today. Because there I've seen people coming from different places, and when they say what they're going through, why they are here, they start with the fact that they have been married for say 30-35 years now, and then my husband is otherwise a nice person. He has some anger issues, একটু বেশি রাগ, দু একটা চটথাপ্পড় মারে, সে ঠিক আছে, খেতে দেয়, স্বামী তো মারধর তো করতেই পারে. The first time when I heard this, despite being a psychologist and having been quote unquote trained to not get perturbed with these things, I actually got perturbed. I did not express it maybe, but deep down something shook me upside down. That is exactly what I mean, probably Ratnavali wanted to mention, that it has been normalized. Ekakta chorthapur is so natural that people don't even bother about it. And then I started thinking, if that is so natural for them, then after 35 years, when they're coming to lodge a complaint about their abuse, what extent, what intensity and degree it had reached? I mean, that was actually shocking for me. So that is a major issue which I find to be a major problem of abuse, why it's not addressed as much as it should be. Now, what abuses we all know? It's basically a maltreatment, whatever, in whatever form. Buladi had mentioned physical, sexual, emotional, verbal, agreed. And hence, I'm not going to mention all these, because of all these four, we have heard of these a lot. Physical, majorly beating. I mean, it can be pushing, beating straight away, whatever. Sexual, rape, molestation. And in sexual, I would also say manufactured consent. It's not only rape and molestation. Manufactured consent is also an abuse. Emotional, like emotional and verbal, going a little hand in hand. When Buladi was also mentioning, like parents abusing children is so normalized that we can't even think of it. And parents telling their children they're stupid, they're idiots, they're good for nothing. Parents in Bengali, so we have heard a lot, parents telling their children, Gordhob, tor dara kichu hobe na. Gordhob, Gadha, these words are used so lovingly that at times I really feel surprised. I really start wondering whether we love those animals to that extent or not. It's used very lovingly, and that's what the parents say. That, oh, Gadha ota to ami ador kore bolechi. No, you cannot. Even if you think that you have said it as a joke, these jokes are what get accumulated and actually lowers down your child's self-esteem, not to a 0, to a minus extent. Apart from these four, I feel there's another abuse which has not been mentioned. So I would strongly like to mention self-neglect. I feel self-neglect is a very strong form of abuse. And this is also something which does have a root of a social training, especially in our country. নিজের কথা ভেবো না, অন্যদের কথা ভাবো, নিজেকে ভালোবেসো না, অন্যদের ভালোবাসো, keep on sacrificing, নিজের দিকে তাকাতে। This concept is instilled in us through our social training since childhood. But trust me, somewhere, if you don't love yourself, you end up loving nobody. You ultimately end up not knowingly, unconsciously, not loving anybody, being jealous of everybody. You don't know it. We don't understand it. But that's what happens. So the self-neglect is actually also a form of abuse. Now, when I say that I differ with Buladi, not contradict, I differ with Buladi because this mental health issue is a major thing. I'll refer back to that, her name actually was not that, but even then, the Nirbhaya case, where the under 18 person, the juvenile person, quote unquote, a very renowned sociologist had conducted a research work, and it was then found out that this boy, since his childhood, he had seen his father beat up his mother, him, All that he has experienced in his life is abuse. Now, please, I am definitely not saying what he did was right. No way. I being abused cannot give me the right, does not give me the right to abuse somebody else, true. But as a psychologist, I would also like to delve into this, that if I have not experienced anything other than abuse in my life, if I have not known what love is, how do I give it to anybody? An empty vessel cannot pour. So if I don't have it in me, I cannot give it to anybody. So one major cause of anybody turning to be an abuser can be the fact that that person has been abused. But then, do all abused people turn out to be abusers? No. Some consciously fight it out. They consciously take a decision that since I have been abused, I will see to it that I don't abuse anybody. But some people cannot consciously fight it out. Everybody in this world, we all don't have the same amount of ego strength. So we all cannot fight it out. Some can fight it out and some might not fight it out. That becomes an issue. So that plays an important role. Now, abusive relationships. Abusive relationships have a pattern, which Buladi has mentioned. And I would also like to second that. It has a pattern. If I've seen an abusive relationship, if I've grown up seeing an abusive relationship, again, the word that Ratnavali used, I believe in that word in case of abuse. I feel that that is normalized. To me, that's normalized. I feel that since my father could beat up my mother, could abuse my mother, and during daytime he could abuse my mother, and at night he could also have sex with my mother. So I feel that that is okay. I feel that that's the pattern. That's perfectly okay. So I start doing the same thing unknowingly, unconsciously. I believe in that because I've grown up seeing that. I might not consciously feel that what I'm doing is right, but then I feel that, but I've seen it happening, so it's right. It's not that it's wrong. So this normalization is a terrible thing. It's absolutely a terrible thing, and that is what might lead people to become abusive as well. I mean, when you grow up seeing that, when you've been in an abusive relationship, you have been abused by your husband, you take that abuse out on your children. Why? Because somehow you felt, as again Buladi was saying, that they don't have anywhere to go. So somehow you have felt that your husband was or has been more powerful than you were or you are. Similarly, your children are less powerful than you are. Many a times we do take refuge to the defense mechanism of displacement by taking it out on people who are less powerful than us. That is also a reason. Another major thing, I mean, abusive relationships are toxic. I'm sure people who work with abusive relationships, they would agree with that abusive relationships are pretty toxic. I've seen many of my clients being time and again being into abusive relationships because they're very toxic. Then what needs to be understood or what needs to be addressed is, what are they getting out of that relationship? If I'm staying in that relationship, for sure I'm getting something. As again Buladi had mentioned, they beche to achi, khete to pacchi, dubela khete to pacchi. So my survival, if my survival is at stake, I might stay in an abusive relationship. Apart from that, survival is more of a practical issue. Apart from that, even if I talk in terms of mental health issues, I mean psychological issues, I would say mental health issues, psychological issues, what I'm getting, we do balance. Trust me, we do balance, we do weigh. Now, weighing what I am getting out of the relationship and what I'm suffering because of the relationship, when we weigh the two, somewhere we make a choice, consciously or unconsciously. Somewhere we make a choice. But to end it all, I would say that one thing is very important. Whatever might be the causes, whatever might be the effects, however we might have to deal with abuse, one or two things are very, very important. Please don't accept things without protesting, point one. Point two, Since, as Dutimala also mentioned, there are laws. And yes, what Dutimala mentioned, everything is not that rosy actually, because laws are there. But the problem is when the people stay back in the same place, or when the husband has to pay for the wife's rented house, again, the amount of abusive words the wife will have to hear, that is also something which the wife cannot take for a long period of time. But it's important to notice that it's to accept, to notice, be aware, and accept that it's an abuse. It's important to point it out, it's important to protest, and it's important to take help at the right places. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Shen, for your valuable advice. Now we have some questions. First, I would like to ask Bula ma'am, there's a question for you. How can being a son one make understand his mother to move out from a 30-year-old abusive marital relationship?
How can his son convince his mother?
Yeah.
Okay. The father is alive
Yes.
and living with them.
Yes.
Okay. So the son has to convince first the father that not to behave in an abusive manner. That's the first step. Before the son convinces mother to get out, because 30 years is a long time. So first tell the father not to behave this way. If you behave this way, then I will move out and mother will move out. So that's the first step. The second step is telling the mother that why do you stay anymore? Because I'm giving you support. So let us go out, or let us go, and let us tell your husband and my father that we are not going to actually accept this, because abusing you means abusing the whole family atmosphere. If the son does that, I have a gut feeling that father might feel obligated to listen when his backs would be against the wall. So I would request the son to do that, if possible, immediately.
Thank you, ma'am.
Atre, I have
Yes.
something to say. Please, I'm disturbing in between.
No. Please, Shikadi, please go on.
Throughout the session, I have one thing to say. Being a female, still I say that it appears to me throughout the session that mostly males are the abuser. But to my knowledge, from my experience, I can say not only the men, the females are also abuser in matrimonial relationship, as a not in a in patriarchal society. The mothers are also abusive, and teachers are also, female teachers are also abusive. So it's not the male. Females are also equally responsible and can be equally abusive. The laws are for the female, but what about male? Sorry, this is my question to Dutimala, Ratnaboli, and Buladi all.
No, but before Dutimala, Ratnabuli, and Buladi, I will respond to this question first, because what the question that you have asked and the point that you have raised, Shikadi, true. I'm not saying that there are no female abusers. There are, but if you go by the ratio and the percentage, it does not come to any existence at all. Yes, Buladi, Ratnabuli.
Yes. Uh, well, I think I have mentioned that it is possible, though I haven't met much, it is possible that the abuse could come from women too. And when we talked about parents, I actually said mothers are also abusive. I said about parents. I didn't really notify in terms of gender. Gave an example of an abusive father, but that doesn't mean that I have offloaded, or let's say scot-free the mothers at all. But the point is, if you take Dutimala, that was the official statistics, that this is a question to me. If the men are also abused by their wives, do they feel that if they go out and say and lodge a complaint, they will be less of a man? Because often I have heard from men friends, আমার বউ আমাকে গালাগালি দিচ্ছে, সেটা আমি বাইরের লোককে বলতে যাবো? আমি কি তাহলে পুরুষ হলাম? So it could be something in the masculine character, the way they are brought up, not as an individual, but masculine, that you have to be, the higher person. So বউ যদি বকেও, গালাগালিও দেয়, তাহলে বাইরে বেশি বলবো না, ম্যাক্সিমাম বলবো she is nagging, কারণ তাহলে তার প্রেস্টিজ চলে যাচ্ছে, এটা ছেলেদের বউ সময় মনে হয়। সেই জন্য even in romantic marriages these days, when there is some problem, the man doesn't talk much, because he thinks that, well, I married, I loved, so it is my responsibility and my skill to handle my wife. See, this particular phrase of handling your wife, can't you handle your wife? It has come, the language always expresses our social conditions. So this kind of situation comes from the fact that from the very beginning, man and the boy are convinced that they have to actually prevail over the situation. What Ratnaboli actually said, that, the kind of legitimation, naturalization of the fact that somehow man is absolutely knows the last word. So there cannot be this. So naturally, we cannot have any relationship. But on the other hand, the women are abusive with women. That we cannot overlook, that women, mothers are often abusive, mother-in-laws are abusive. Sometimes we are more abusive than some of the counterpart men. So it is not a generalization, but the fact is, the legal scenario and the statistics data we have is that more women are actually suffering, and that is being attested. I mean, we cannot say that women are so courageous that every time they go and complain. No, only 1/3 women complain. 2/3, the surveys and the National Crime Record Bureau data have shown us that only 1/3. Sometimes it is 10% in areas they do not complain. We do not want to tell others that I have been abused by my husband. My God, that will take away all my prestige, my professional status. So that's an important position we got to remember. And that is one reason whatever law we have are not implemented properly. Because in the domestic area, we have no situation where we call the man for counseling before marriage, before living in. See, we don't have any skill training before we enter into relationships. But that is important, that we go to counselors before we get into a relationship, before we take a decision. And then, oh my God, I go to a mental health counselor before marriage. My marriage is nullified right and then. That's the problematic part. That's the stigma, which actually exists, that if I go to a mental health person, if I go a psychiatrist, there is something wrong with me. So am I getting to the mad quote situation, or insane situation? So actually we cannot accept that these are normal things, that I might feel doubt, I might like to talk to a counselor. The counselor has more skill, which actually advise me properly. See, these are correct social practices, which we have not been practicing.
Actually, move on.
Yes. Next, we have a question for Ratnabali ma'am. Is there any peaceful method to communicate the abuser, especially if he is family, that what he is doing is actually going to create an adverse effect either on the individual or a relationship, as the case may be in future?
আরেকবার একটু ছোট করে বলো আত্রেই, যে প্রশ্নটা কি
হ্যাঁ।
ছিল?
প্রশ্নটা হচ্ছে যে, is there any peaceful method of communicating with the abuser? ভালোভাবে কি বোঝানো সম্ভব তাদের?
আসলে
শান্তিপূর্ণভাবে বোঝানো যাবে।
মানে পিসফুল বিষয়টা হলো একটা প্রিমিয়াম। আজকে সারা পৃথিবীতে পিস কোথায় আছে আমরা জানি না। সুতরাং পিসফুল প্রসেস কি হবে সেটা কেউ দিতে পারবে না, এমনকি দুটিমালাও দিতে পারবেন না। কারণ যেভাবে আমাদের কোর্ট অর্গানাইজড, যে ধরনের নেগোসিয়েশন কোর্ট চত্বরে করতে হয়, সেটা ইটসেলফ ইজ অ্যাবিউজিভ। এটা আমি বলতে চাইনি, তার দুটিমালা হার্ট হবেন, কিন্তু আমরা আমাদের অভিজ্ঞতায় দেখেছি যখন একজন মানসিক প্রতিবন্ধীকে আমরা কোর্টে বিশেষ করে সেক্সুয়াল অ্যাসল্টের ক্ষেত্রে আমরা জাস্টিস পাওয়ানোর জন্য নিয়ে গিয়েছি, সেখানে যে ধরনের কটূক্তি শুনতে হয়েছে সেই স্ট্রাকচারটাও কিন্তু ভীষণ ভীষণ নির্যাতনকে দৃঢ় করে। এবার প্রশ্ন হলো যে পারিবারিক পরিসরে আমরা কি একটা কোনো পদ্ধতি তৈরি করতে পারি যেখানে আমরা অ্যাবিউজারকে বলতে পারি, নির্যাতনকারীকে বলতে পারি? অবশ্যই বলতে পারি। ইনফ্যাক্ট এটা আমার থেকে ভালো দ্যুতিমালা উত্তর দিতে পারবেন, কারণ we have two kinds of justice. One is retributive justice, which Dukimala deals with, and the other is restorative justice. I personally believe in restorative justice a lot, and I have seen myself that restorative justice works beautifully, especially in cases of trafficked victim and the trafficker, which is also an abuser-abusee relationship. So, you know, there are ways to mitigate challenges, and we don't talk about restorative justice, because আমি একবার আমার মনে আছে একটা প্যানেলে আমি restorative justice এর কথা শুনেছিলাম, কারণ আমাদের কোর্টের পদ্ধতি এত বিলম্বিত যে সেখানে ন্যায় পেতে গেলে এত বছর অপেক্ষা করতে হয়, যে সেখানে রেস্টোরেটিভ জাস্টিসের মাধ্যমে আমার যে হার্মটা হয়েছে, আমার যে ক্ষতিটা হয়েছে, সেই ক্ষতিটাকে কি করে উপশম দেওয়া যায়, ক্ষতিটার উপরে কি করে প্রলেপ দেওয়া যায়, সেইটা রেস্টোরেটিভ জাস্টিস ঠিক করে। কেমন? তো যখন আমি এই প্রসঙ্গটা তুলেছিলাম, আমার মনে আছে আমার কো প্যানেলিস্ট খুব নামকরা একজন অ্যাডভোকেট ছিলেন, তখন উনি আমাকে চিৎকার করে বলছেন, তাহলে কি আপনি বলছেন যে রেপিস্টের সাথে রেপ ভিকটিমের বিয়ে দিয়ে দিতে? এটাও একটা ভীষণ প্যাট্রিয়ার্কাল কেস, কারণ রেস্টোরেটিভ জাস্টিসে কোথাও বিয়ে দেওয়ার প্রশ্ন ওঠে না। রেস্টোরেটিভ জাস্টিসের সেন্স হলো, ভাই আমি কোর্টে যেতে চাই না, আমার যে ক্ষতি হয়েছে, তুমি যে আমার ক্ষতি করেছো, সেই পূরণ হিসেবে আমি তোমার সঙ্গে কথা বলতে চাই এবং আমি নিজে তোমাকে শাস্তি দিতে চাই। সেই শাস্তিটা হতে পারে একটা চর, বা সেই শাস্তিটা হতে পারে যে তুমি আমার সামনে এখন বসে থাকো। সেই শাস্তিটা নির্ধারণ করবে ভুক্তভোগী মানুষটা, এবং সেটা পিসফুল হবে না, সেটা কনফ্রন্টেটিভ হবে না, সেটা অ্যাগ্রেসিভ হবে, এটা নির্ভর করছে যিনি এই পুরো পদ্ধতিটা মিডিয়েট করছেন। কারণ রেস্টোরেটিভ জাস্টিসে একটা ভীষণ প্রশিক্ষিত মিডিয়েটর লাগে। আগের প্রশ্নটা ধরে কি 1 সেকেন্ড আমি একটা কথা বলতে পারি আত্রেই শিখাদির প্রসঙ্গে?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, অবশ্যই ম্যাম।
শিখাদি, তুমি যে প্রশ্নটা করেছিলে সেই প্রশ্নটা একটি চমৎকার প্রশ্ন, কারণ এখান থেকে মেয়েরা মেয়েদের শত্রু কথাটা আসে। এবার শিখাদি, আমাদের ধরো যদি কেসটা হয় পিতৃতন্ত্রের মূল্যবোধ বা পুরুষতন্ত্রের মূল্যবোধ, সেটা নারী পুরুষ ট্রান্স নির্বিশেষে সেটার ধারক এবং বাহক হয়। কাজেই সেখানে একজন মহিলা নির্যাতনকারী হতে পারেন। আমরা অনেক সময় সমকামী সম্পর্কে দেখেছি যে একজন মহিলা আরেকজন মহিলাকে দাম্পত্যের পরিসরে নির্যাতন করছেন। কাজেই এখানে স্ট্রাকচারটা খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট, যে আমরা কোন স্ট্রাকচারটা ধরে কথা বলছি, সেটা একটা দিক। আর দ্বিতীয় দিকটা আমার মনে হয় দ্যুতিমালা একটু বলতে পারবেন যে আমাদের দেশে জেন্ডার নিউট্রাল ল যেগুলি আছে সেগুলো কতখানি কার্যকরী, কারণ জেন্ডার নিউট্রাল ল আছে।
আমি এখানে আমি একটা কথা বলি, জেন্ডার নিউট্রাল ল হওয়ার আগে লটা অ্যাকচুয়ালি মেল স্ট্যান্ডার্ডে হচ্ছে। জেন্ডার নিউট্রালিটি করতে গিয়ে যদি আমরা পেট্রিয়ার্কাল স্ট্যান্ডার্ডটাকে ঘুরিয়ে আনি, তাহলে একটা প্রবলেম আছে। কেননা জেন্ডার নিউট্রালিটি মানে একভাবে দেখা, কিন্তু ভিকটিমরা কিন্তু একভাবে লোকেটেড না। তাহলে প্রত্যেকটা তার সিচুয়েশন এন্ড লোকেশন দেখে তবে হতে হবে। ল কিন্তু সিচুয়েশন লোকেশন দেখে না, এটা একটা প্রবলেম। ক্লাস পজিশন দেখে না, পেছন দিকটা দেখে না, ল সামনের দিকটা দেখে, হোয়াট এভার উইল কাম টু অ্যাজ এভিডেন্স। মানে আমার একটা ভীতি আছে যে জেন্ডার নিউট্রালিটি করতে গিয়ে আমরা মেল স্ট্যান্ডার্ডকে আপল করে ফেলবো। তার কারণ হচ্ছে বেশিরভাগ সময় তারা অনেক বেশি রকমের কি বলবো এম্পাওয়ার্ড থাকে অনেক সময়। ফলে মেয়েটিকে হবে কি প্রুভ করতে হবে, যেমন রেপে প্রুভ করতে করতে পাগলা সিচুয়েশন। নির্ভয়া রেপের 2013 অ্যামেন্ডমেন্টের পরে কিচ্ছু তো কমেনি ধর্ষণ, নাথিং হ্যাজ ডিক্রিজড, rape hasn't decreased at all. And there is also a reason that Verma Committee's all recommendations were not taken, but even then it hasn't. So gender neutrality, I am afraid at this moment that we will be again upholding or rather fetishizing it because male standard will be the standard. Then I would rather say that each case has to be then investigated the way our legal system is not at all equipped to do that. The legal system which cannot
বুলাদি, আমরা জেন্ডার নিউট্রালিটি সম্বন্ধে অ্যাপ্রিহেন্সিভ হতে পারি, কিন্তু আমাদের আইনের ক্ষেত্রে যদি এনফোর্সমেন্টের প্রবলেম হয় সেটা কিন্তু জেন্ডার নিউট্রালিটি ল এর দোষ নয়,
সেটা অ্যাজাম্পশনসের ব্যাপার আছে ল এ,
সেটা এনফোর্সেবিলিটির প্রবলেম।
Not necessarily. Law is based on assumption. Ratnabari, that is why we still do not have marital rape. এখানে assumption-এর ব্যাপার আছে. India is one of those few countries who doesn't have laws against marital rape. That means law presumes the right on women's body, the wife's body of husband. Law legally recognizes husband's right. Law এখানে ওয়াইফের রাইট কে রেকগনাইজ করে না, তাহলে বহুদিন আগে ম্যারিটাল রেপ এসে যেত। বহুবার, lot of times women's movement has asked for inclusion of marital rape, but Indian judiciary or Indian parliament hasn't given into it because it is done by the mainstream pattern of the mental framework. I wouldn't say that. Law assumptions of the law are actually, when we had the prior rape law, the assumption started with the fact whether the woman was chaste or not. So we fought 33 years to prove
essentially the assumption of the law, if you see, is a he. So the problem is there because there is no she in law, it's always he. So the male is the center of any legal framework. সেটা তো আমরা জানি, কিন্তু
ওইটা তো ওইখানে আরো যদি এটা হয় জেন্ডার নিউট্রাল, তাহলে আর মহিলারা যে 10% কথা বলছিল আর বলতে পারবে না কথা। তার কারণ হচ্ছে যে look at the composition of the high courts and supreme court, এত বছরেও we have won. So there is a real problem if we do that. So I am apprehensive for the reality. The reality is so crude, that's why I'm apprehensive. After all, we have to take care of this. See, reality is the first mother, not the theoretical position. Theoretically, we are all equals, everything. Law is blind, everything equal, but that is not the case. In order to prove a rape of the master of the house by the maid household help is an awful task. So I am apprehensive. I will agree to that. I would not ask for gender neutrality at this point. I don't think India is ready. And I have, with due respect to Dutimala, I have lot of suspicions about the judge's intentions and the way lawyers fight the case. Look at the rapists of Nirvaya, had lots of lawyers. They were arguing for their pardon, etc., etc. I'm not in favor of capital punishment. I would have given 100 years of jail, rigorous punishment, to see how does it look like if you stay in a jail. So, but the problem is with our judiciary is that in the name of neutrality, they uphold the interest of the privileged, and males are still more privileged in number than in the counterpart level. I may be more privileged than my working class male partner, but I'm not more privileged than my class partner, male class partner. So that's where the problem is. In each class, we are down, absolutely yet. Now, one day it will come that we will have a gender neutral law. I would hope for that, but time hasn't come from India. And that's my personal view. As an activist, I would say that. I wouldn't call for it now. That's the problem.
Atri,
Can I just tell you one thing? Very disagree
yes, please.
with let me just add 2 sentences. I won't take more time. That is, for us sociologists, the mental health is socially constructed. I have said one thing, that we apply social definitions, and that is the gatekeepers who actually give. Those are the two concepts we use, that whether mental health is mental health, we actually apply certain
I
social
understand.
already normative definition. That's why for me, self is a
Understood.
social factor. That's all.
Understood. Cleared and understood. And Atri,
Yes.
are there very many questions? Because I feel because of this topic, I would actually rather like to have this same panel physically someday in front. Okay, actually, I would love to have all 4 of us along with all of you physically one day, so that we can actually go on talking, because there's actually no end to it. I mean, there are many things which we could not mention. There are many things which Ratnaboli, Buladi, Dutimala, none of them could mention, and there are pretty many things. Are there pretty many questions, Atri?
There are, but we
Choose one or two. See, I would suggest choose 1 or 2 for Ratnaboli and Buladi or Dutimala. Spare me, because I'm an in-house person.
Be
Spare me.
hierarchical, Atri. Choose.
Yeah, choose 1 or 2. Why I say choose the ones you find to be most important. I mean, that's the reason why I say choose.
Okay, then I would like to ask one question, and it's an open question to everybody. What could be some of the intervention strategies that school staff or parents can take to intervene in problems like proactive aggression?
We give birth to children, not male or female. All parents must, from today on, who are listening, please consider your children as children and making them individuals, not girl or boys. And to all school teachers, you teach children, students, not girls or boys. To everybody, we are not girls or boys, men or women. We are here not to develop femininity or masculinity. We are here to help the individual grow the individuality. 1 point formula.
Ratnabuli, would you like to address it, please? No, she's nodding her head. Any other question for Ratnabuli?
Yeah, we can have one question for ma'am. And ma'am, there is a question. How can a person be made aware that she or he is being abused, and that she or he must seek help? Because as it's been just said that most people don't realize the abuse or deny to realize the abuse.
Yeah, I would request Ratnabuli to address this.
Unmute,
again, because
Ratnabuli, unmute yourself.
Yeah, she'll do that.
No, she hasn't probably. Yeah.
Atri, I think it is not up to us to drag people out and say that you've been abused, you need to seek help. Because I think if we believe in agency, if we have built agency, person should be able to identify the abuse herself or himself and should take ownership to make changes in his or her life. Because the moment you take responsibility of somebody else's well-being, psyche, and to end abuse, it will not work. Because we have seen so many women coming to us, and as Subarna was saying, complaining even after 37 years of marriage, how violent it has been. But ultimately, the change has to come from within you. And that will depend on how we have built the concept of choices and agency of that person.
And also, Ratnabuli, maybe, I'm not sure, maybe, I don't know whether you'll agree, maybe if we try to do it for them, that also somewhere unconsciously gives us a sense of power.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you raised it. Yes.
Yeah, which is wrong, which is also wrong. I mean,
just one more suggestion. Please stop telling daughters, women, that marriage is a compulsory destination. Living with a man is a compulsory destination. It is not. fulfilling your potentialities is a compulsory destination.
And Atri, I said right in the beginning that you have to ask yourself how you're feeling. And we are not trained to talk in a language of feeling at all. It has remained within the domain of psychologists to talk a language of feeling. We haven't trained people around us to articulate the feelings. We hardly can name the feelings. So I think we have to begin from there. We have to train both men, women, boys, girls to start talking about how they feel.
বাচাল কথাটা বাচ্চাটাকে যেতে হবে, বেশি কথা বলে কথাটা যেতে হবে, তার্কিক কথাটা যেতে হবে, because if we don't talk, if we don't are able to express feeling, then we will all be passive recipients. মেয়েদের কি কথা বলা বারণ ছিল, যে মেয়েটা কম কথা বলে সেই আসল মহিলা ছিল, সুতরাং ওইগুলো সব যেতে হবে।
যৌন হেনস্থাকারী যারা, তাদের ক্ষেত্রে আমরা মহিলাদের বলি যে মুহূর্তে তোমার কাছে কোনো ধরনের আচরণ যদি অনভিপ্রেত হয়, সেটা কিন্তু হেনস্থার পর্যায়ে পৌঁছবে। অনভিপ্রেত কিনা এবং আমার কষ্ট হচ্ছে কিনা, আমি অস্বস্তিতে কিনা, সেটা আমি ছাড়া ওপারের
সেটা আমাকে রিয়েলাইজ করতে হবে।
আমরা ধরিত্রী সর্বসহ নই, সীতা ওই জন্য প্রবেশ করে গেছিল লাস্টে, রামকে সহ্য না করতে। সুতরাং ওইটা মনে করতে হবে যে আমরা সর্বসহা নই, আমরাও রক্ত মাংসের মানুষ।
মানে আমরা সর্বংসহা নই শুধু নয়, বিষয়টা আমাদের সর্বংসহা হওয়ার কোনো দায় নেই আমাদের বলতে, কোনো মানুষেরই কোনো দায় নেই। ওকে আত্রি,
একটা কথা শুধু আমি একটু বলতে চাই যে অ্যাবিউজের ক্ষেত্রে যারা আমরা অ্যাক্টিভিস্ট বলো, সাইকোলজিস্ট বলো, আমাদের না একটা সেভিয়ার মোডে চলে যাওয়ার ভীষণ
টেন্ডেন্সি আছে।
এবং এই সেভিয়ার মোডে কিন্তু আমরা কেউ যেতে পারবো না, কারণ এটার মধ্যে অন্তর্নিহিত আছে এক ধরনের ক্ষমতার গন্ধ, সেটাকে আমাদের বাদ দিয়ে চলতে হবে।
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very
I
much.
feel very happy.
Yeah.
I feel very happy that instead of 9 o'clock, we have gone on till 9:30 because of the topic. But somewhere we'll have to close it. So please take over.
Yes. Thank you very much. And indeed, the topic was really very interesting, and all of our esteemed panelists did explained everything so beautifully. It's really very heartbreaking that the topic has to end. Now I would like to request Ms. Lopamudra Goswami to give the vote of thanks. Lopati?
Yes.
Unmute yourself.
Yes, I have done.
Yeah.
Hello, I am audible?
Yes. Yeah.
Hello,
yes.
hello.
Yes,
Okay.
you are audible.
Now we are at the concluding part of our Facebook Live program on the topic Stop the Abuses, Identifying and Dealing with Abuse and Abusive Relationships, organized by ESPA. Our program was ornamented by the eminent sociologists like Dr. Bula Bhadro, whose speech elevated this program to a high dimension. Thank you, Dr. Bhadro. The sparkling presence of Ms. Ratnaboli Roy, an eminent mental health activist and founder and managing trustee of Anjali, our own Ratnaboli Di, increased our enthusiasm. We are very much thankful to her. Our heartiest thanks to Ms. Dutibala Bakchi, a very eminent law practitioner. Her valuable speech was helpful to all and would be helpful in future. Special thanks to Dr. Shubarna Sen, a renowned psychologist and the secretary of our organization. Her view towards abusive relationships should be remembered. Special thanks to the moderator, Ms. Atrey Chakraborty. Thanks to President of our organization, Ms. Shikha De. In this pandemic situation, our web program wouldn't be successful without the technical assistance provided by Ms. Anoma Modok and Devoshmita Dash. So a great applause for them. Vote of thanks can never get over. Without the viewers, without their participation, our program couldn't be successful. So finally, a warm and heartfelt thanks to all the participants who were present. Thank you all.
Thank you, Lopadi. And just before saying bye-bye, I would like to remind one thing. 18th October, we are going to have another live session, and the topic is decision making and career option to new normal from 8 to 9 p.m. We would like to like all of you to join this. And if you have any further query, you can mail us to aspa2003@gmail.com, and also visit our webpage www.aspa.org. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful night and hope to see all of you again. Thank you. Good night.